So Kate, thank you so much for being here at our webinar for sustainable parenting during COVID. I know it's a crazy time for everyone. We're so excited to have you on, and we will be recording, so we'll put this on our YouTube page and everyone will be able to access it anytime. And Kate, did you want to say anything?
Well, I'm just grateful for the opportunity, and I'm glad that you guys are here live. And yeah, I can get started whenever you're ready.
Yeah, take it away.
Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so I made you guys a little presentation. So my name is Kate. I think I know almost everybody on here so far, so you guys, this will be a little bit redundant for you, but I'm Kate, and I'm really excited to give you guys this presentation about sustainable parenting during COVID-19, this incredibly stressful time, but hopefully we can work through this presentation, work towards some strategies and solutions that we employ in our family that my hope is you can incorporate, whether you have children or not, really into your own life. And I feel like it's a particularly relevant time right now to start to begin to incorporate those changes. And so I'll talk a little bit about that as well. So just really briefly, my background, I am a mom of two adorable boys. Of course, I'm biased. I have a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old. We moved here from the East Coast a couple of years ago, but have really connected with the Hawaiian lifestyle and spirit, and we love the beach and the ocean. And I think that plays a really big part in our drive for sustainability. If you don't know me, then you don't know how crazy we are about rescue animals. We have 3 rescue dogs and 5 rescue bunnies, and they're always a big hit on Instagram. How we came upon 5 rescue bunnies is a story for another time, but yeah, we just love them. And then finally, I am the founder of Rogue Wave. We make compostable beach toys using plastic made from plants, not petroleum. Also, this stems from my love and passion for trying to conserve this planet that I think is so important to pass on to my children and to your children and to everybody's children. I think it's really important that we understand why things are made the way they are, how they're made the way they are, and how we can improve upon those. Okay, so let's dig into this. What is sustainability? Why does it matter? And why is there a problem? What's the solution? So I think broadly we can talk about sustainability in a super general term as just the ability to be maintained, or the ability to maintain something. And when we're talking about like our current situation, preservation of natural resources for future generations is really kind of like this big concept that we're talking about when we frame the conversation of sustainability. And that can be really overwhelming as a parent to try to take this giant concept of like trying to preserve our natural resources that we're obviously depleting, and try and like bring that down to a perspective that a child can comprehend. These can be really daunting tasks, and the topics can seem really overwhelming and depressing, but I think that there's a way when we start at home to speak to the children, regardless of age, in a way that they can understand it. Also, I forgot to mention this at the outset, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to type them in to the chat, and we can address those as we go. And then also want to let everybody know that while I am talking about sustainable parenting, I am no expert in this. I think parenting is really a learn as you go scenario. And so I would say the same for trying to teach sustainability in parenting. We definitely learn as we go and take a super humble approach. So if I'm missing something or there's a glaring oversight in the presentation, of course, I'd love the feedback or the questions on it. So sustainability in the home, how is this relevant to me and my family? I think that like I said before, we have this really giant concept of sustainability in general. And the way that we like to deal with this in our home is to make sustainability a concept that is really all about decision making. And that's something that we can exercise a huge amount of control over and a huge amount of thought around in several aspects of our life, like thousands of times in a day, right? So that's really how we in our family break this down. We turn this giant concept into a practice. And again, this is like little decisions from whether we're going to drive to school or we're going to bike or walk to school, and what kind of food are we going to eat throughout the day, and what kind of products are we going to buy. And these are all I would rather say that these are opportunities instead of problems, right? These are opportunities to talk to our kids about why we're deciding to do what we do and what those decisions mean to the greater community. And that brings me to what I think is a really relevant point right now, which is sustainability during COVID-19. Why would we start this right now? COVID-19 has presented a really interesting opportunity. Of course, it goes without saying this is a really terrible time. It's awful. This pandemic is not something that we should be taking advantage of. However, we can learn from it. And I think what we are learning is that our individual actions through COVID-19, through this pandemic, our individual actions have an impact on the community, right? So hopefully now you're seeing some of these parallels, right? So whether we decide to go to the grocery store or not has an impact not just on ourselves, but on the people who are also in the store, on the other shoppers, on the people who are working at the cashier, the people who are stocking the shelves. So now we have to take that decision about whether we're going to go to the store, and we really have to consider it. What are the implications of the decision that I'm making? And so we have to start making these decisions based on the collective good, right? So I think this opportunity now is really pertinent to sustainable living, because for our family, at least, that's how we make these sustainably minded decisions. How does the decision that we're about to make affect the community, the immediate community, the global community? And that does affect all of these other aspects, like whether we drive a car or bike to school. You know, we can bring all of this back home to that single decision. And then we're also seeing through this social distancing and quarantine that some of our decisions that we've been making are not actually sustainable. A really great example of this, especially here on Hawaii, is food. Food security is always a hot topic, but I think right now we're seeing the implications of that on a larger scale. I was reading in an email from one of our OFR, the head of our Ocean Friendly Restaurant program for Surfrider, that the CSA boxes here on Oahu are actually up 500%. So that means people have started to realize that supporting our local farmers is actually hugely important, especially when we need food and we're not sure if we can get it. Back to the beginning, back to the definition of sustainability, like, is something manageable? Can it be maintained? This is a good time to look at those practices and decisions and decide, is this something that I want to move forward with, or can I make this sort of more permanent, sustainable choice? And right now, I think small changes are the best changes because of everything that's happening, outside. Okay, so sustainable parenting. How the heck are we going to do that during this global pandemic? Everything right now is really overwhelming. So again, back to the beginning, small changes. And I am a parent, just like parents who are watching this. I understand how difficult it is to do anything more than just get through the day while we're trying to homeschool the kids and make sure they're getting exercise and make sure they're not watching too much TV, and the list goes on. But hopefully we're going to talk about some things that can inspire and create some activities that people can work around or work into the schedule. And really, I hope that they're just kind of fun. So 3 activation areas, or 3 areas of focus in our family that I hope are strategies that will be useful to you. We have obviously the kids, we have our home, and then we have the community. And we're going to dig into each of those. So for kids, I think education, exposure, and play are the most important elements to teaching sort of consciously what a sustainable lifestyle is all about. And creating that context and connection is really important, because it's my personal belief that when you really live and perceive and notice the world around you, you're going to feel the need to take care of it. And some of the examples that I have here are sorry if you guys can hear that. When we were on a trip to the Big Island, we did a lot of snorkeling, and we do a lot of snorkeling in general. And I think this is a really great way for our kids to really be a part of their environment. And I think when you are a part of it and you notice it and you respect it, you're apt to make decisions that support, sustain, and protect it. And so this was one of, I don't know if you guys saw that. I'm going to play this one again, but in this slide with the yellow tang over here, that white coral is actually bleaching coral. This was back in October. So while we were on the Big Island, we participated in a NOAA citizen science program where you could report bleaching corals. So this was like another way that we are, I don't want to say like sneakily or underhandedly, but we're just doing it, right? Like, we're not saying to the kids, hey, we're going to be sustainably minded and we are going to be conservationists right now and we're going to do this. It was more like, hey, we noticed this. Why don't we participate in this program? We're going to be snorkeling a lot on this trip. Let's make sure we annotate what we see. And so I think, again, this is all just reinforcing the point that when you actually experience your environment, whether it's the ocean, the mountains, a park in your backyard, you're going to be more inclined to care for it, create those memories and those positive associations that are going to help promote conservation in the long run. Okay, how do I get back? Give me one sec, guys. Okay. So how do we do that now when our beaches are closed, when we can't necessarily be as recreational as we were before? I think this is where we have to be a little more creative and almost settle for a second place. I do think that the very best place for us to teach our children about the magnificence of the natural world is actually in the natural world. But while we are home, there are other ways in which we can do that. And let me get you guys up on this one. Okay, can you guys see? Well, not there yet. Bear with me, guys. Okay, can everybody see this? It's the RoadWave resource page. So I've put together some resources for families, especially here in the educational videos and live streams. So this for me is like my second best. If you can't be in the ocean, then here are some programs where you can actually experience some of what our amazing oceans offer. And my particular favorite is the Monterey Bay Aquarium live cam. They have a like live into the ocean, into the kelp forest camera. So a lot of their cameras are great and they're really cute and you get to see the moon jellies and all of this stuff, but it's everything that's in the aquarium. These are the ocean cams, so you can actually like see what's going on in real time in the bay. So I think really important to maintain that connection to our natural world. And while we're at home and looking for things to do and occupy time and keep the kids educated and informed and still maintaining that connection, we can use these resources. And there's quite a few of them. These are just my favorites. So, okay, let's go back. Okay, hang on, guys. All right, are you guys still with me?
Yes, we're here.
Okay, let me just pull up my... Thank you for your patience. Okay, so using that technology to create that connection to the ocean is really important. And then I also think that, you know, as much as we're told not to use like constant amounts of technology and screen time, I think doing things like showing Chasing Coral on Netflix or Planet Earth, these kinds of things are really important too. Kids love animals, right? And so a lot of these kinds of docuseries have lots of great experiences for the kids as well. So I would say to the parents, don't be afraid to tap into those things. If you need a break, but you still want to give your kids something like juicy and educational, use those resources. And then when we talk about play, I think several aspects of play, again, sort of this subconscious understanding of what it is to be sustainable, right, as a child. So using what's available, this is something that is really easy and almost underrated. As parents, like modern day parents, there is so much available to us so easily. We can go on Amazon and get almost anything that we want without really thinking too much about the consequences. And so I think when we step back and say, okay, what is around us, what's available and accessible, what can we put into motion right now, then we're sort of tapping into that, okay, sustainable mentality. This is something that can be maintained. It's something that doesn't have a detrimental impact on the world around us, and it's creative, right? And then don't underestimate the power of repairing things that are broken instead of buying a replacement for them. I think when we take the time to repair broken things, there's a lot that happens, right? One, we have an understanding of what goes into making the product. Two, it's an opportunity to learn. Like STEM is so huge right now, and if you are repairing something like a watch or a bike, you are engaging so many different concepts. And then finally, creating kind of like with recycled materials. This is one of my son's favorite things to do. This is such an easy way to create art, to build. And again, I think we really underestimate that power. And I think too, sort of a side note, I think my youngest son really thrives on this because we don't always have something for him to do. So his creations from cardboard and kind of trash come from him being a little bit bored and having to figure out his own fun. So I think that is part of it too, just like letting them sort of figure out what it is that they want to do. And here are some examples of that. So our neighbor, the picture on the left, our neighbor gave us a bunch of their plumerias using what's available, right? And so we turned that into some leis while my in-laws were here. And hakules. And that was a really fun activity. And I know not everybody lives in Hawaii and has access to that, but I think if you just take a step back and look around you, you can find some pretty amazing things to do with your kiddos. The top middle is my son who loves to create with cardboard. He, I think in this one, made a control center. I think this one is the control center. And then the bottom right is my oldest son, and he is reading. And so I included these two photos because I want to remind everyone that all of our kids are unique and different. My middle son, my youngest son in the middle photo learns by doing and is super creative. And then my oldest son loves to research, and he really absorbs things through text. So knowing what the strengths of your child are and how they really intake their information is going to be helpful as you figure out how to add those little sustainable nuggets into their daily lives. So home is another place that we can instill these ideals. And this is really where those decisions that we're making on a daily or multiple times a day comes into play. So again, we're creating context here in the home that these decisions we're making every day have a huge impact on the world around us. And some things that we like to do in our house, just to create that awareness: gardening. We have grown a lot of things from seed. We've also purchased from our local purveyors. I think that there are so many lessons that we can learn from something as simple as a garden, and I'm actually really happy to see that a lot of people have started gardens during this time. when we garden, especially with our kids, we're teaching them about the importance of growth, patience, right? And there's this reward for taking the time to nurture something, which is like delicious food at the end. Right now, we have a cucumber plant that is just kicking butt, and every day we can go out and get a fresh cucumber to eat with our lunch. So that's, for my youngest son who loves cucumbers, that's like such a gift, right? And this is such a simple thing that anybody can do, and you can really do it no matter where you live, whether you have yard or not, right? You can do that. You can do a windowsill garden, you can do herbs. There's really limitless potential with a garden. And then using aquaponics, I think this is a great way to show children that we can solve problems in unique ways. So we're still growing food, but we're growing it in a completely different capacity, using a completely different system. And I'm going to show you guys this in just a second too. And then composting, I love composting, but I have to be really honest, we are terrible at it. I don't know why. I think it's because we produce just so much food waste on a daily basis because we're eating so many fruits and vegetables. So we always have like way more green waste than brown waste. So we're always trying to, figure out this problem. And I think that's another really important aspect in sustainable parenting. It's like, we don't have all the answers. It's teaching us to be humble and admit mistakes and keep searching for the right answers. And I think that's an important lesson for the kids to know too, is that just because we do something doesn't mean it's always going to work, and you have to keep trying. And then of course, recycling what you can, and then using what you can't in some secondary capacity if possible. And then being outside, riding bikes, slowing down, noticing your space. I have a scavenger hunt that we've created that's on our Rogue Wave site. And I think that the beauty of that is it's really having kids like look around and notice things and help identify flowers and identify birds and certain plants. And again, trying to create that really solid connection with the world around them, because I think it's fundamental to growing up as humans that want to protect and conserve their space around them. And then I think finally cooking plant-based meals together. Of course, I'm going to plug plant-based meals. We are a plant-based family. There is so much power in deciding every meal that you are going to do the least amount of harm to the world around you. And I really think that my children's understanding of sustainability and conservation came from us being a plant-based family, because they noticed once they started going to school that what they were eating was different from their classmates, and they asked questions about it. And so that gave my husband and I the opportunity to talk about the rationale for the decision that we made to raise them in a plant-based family, and the power of choosing certain foods that protect and promote peace and conservation and use the least amount of resources and trying to stay as local as possible. There's a lot of power in that. And I've noticed, especially with my youngest, he is just so proud of that fact. And he loves to talk about being plant-based, being vegan, and the reasons for it. So I would love for everyone who watches this to say, I'm so inspired, I'm gonna, be plant-based forever, but I don't expect that to happen. What I would love is for everyone to try at least one plant-based meal, cooking a plant-based meal with their kids, with the intent to try and add that to the repertoire, right? Because small changes over time can have a really big impact. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we can do. Minimum 3 times a day, you're making that choice. What you're putting on your plate has that greater ripple effect on your community around you. So just some examples of our garden. It's a really humble, modest garden, right? There's not a lot happening here. We've had failed basil. You can see our little basil in the front there. A couple of failed basils. We have like a struggling mint plant in the back. The cucumber plant, like surprisingly, just did so well. And then our cherry tomatoes, we have to fight the mina birds for every single cherry tomato that comes. But again, these are really good lessons for the kids. food is difficult to grow, or can be difficult to grow, and it's important for kids to understand what goes into that. And so these are all little lessons that we can glean from each of these aspects. And then our aquaponics, I want everyone to take a look at the photo on the left. So this aquaponics set was actually a gift to us from some friends of ours who weren't really using it anymore and thought we would like it. And of course, we love it. But I want you to look at how simple this can be. It's 2, or I think it's 4 beer crates, some 2x4s. I mean, there's not a lot. It's not fancy, and it doesn't have to be fancy. But it really does the job well, and it teaches the kids that there's a completely different way that you can grow food that still works and is sustainable, right? So using the byproduct from the fish to help fertilize the plants, and then the water from the plants dripping back down into the reservoir for the fish, and then the whole cycle completes itself over and over. So talk about sustainable, like this is just one of the most sustainable ways that we can grow food. And it's just like this awesome science experiment for the kids. Okay, and then that takes us to sort of my last big bucket here, which is community and our role within the community in a sustainable capacity. So I think now we have to redefine our role because of COVID-19, where beforehand, our role with the community and sustainability was things like attending Surfrider beach cleanups, right? We were educating, the kids were educating their peers by volunteering at Hanauma Bay, telling people about conservation, why you don't step on the reef, why you use reef-safe sunblock, these kinds of things. And of course, just being in the ocean so that they can experience that connection. Now, things have changed and we can't do that anymore. So we have to redefine what that means within our community. And so maybe now, instead of beach cleanups, we're teaching our kids that we actually need to create less waste, because we can't go out into those beach cleanups and clean up what we've left behind. And I think this is also an opportunity, you know, maybe before, where beach cleanups were sort of alleviating that guilt, right? That consumer guilt, like, okay, yes, I'm gonna buy this plastic, whatever, but I'm gonna go clean a couple of pounds of plastic off the beaches. Now we have to stop and say, okay, I probably can't participate in a beach cleanup for a couple of months. How can I reduce my impact? How can I create less waste? And these are conversations that we can be having with our children. Do we really need to buy another whatever? You know, can we reduce our waste? Can we use what we have at home? Can we make something? All of these are opportunities, and I like to frame them as that instead of problems, right? Volunteering now at Hanauma has turned into educating others in unique ways. Things like a webinar like this, helping give resources to others that we uniquely possess. And I'm not the only person who's, you know, raising children to be this way. I can learn a lot from others. And I think that the new normal is going to include a lot more of this kind of education in that volunteer capacity. And, you know, what else does this new community engagement look like in terms of sustainability? I really am opening that up to all of you. You don't have to answer necessarily, but just something to think about. I mean, we, parents, but just general population, we all have this sort of new frontier ahead of us, but we still have the same objective in mind, which is sustainable lifestyle, right? And so how can we stay engaged with our communities while this new reality is growing, right? So I'm gonna just leave that out there with you guys, and you can sit with that and think about what that might mean. And then just to wrap this all up, preparing for post-COVID-19, there will be an end. We don't know what it's gonna look like, and we don't know when it's gonna be, but I think that the actions that we take now are gonna shape, obviously they're gonna shape our kids' future and the future of sustainability. Just to recap, I think that this is an opportunity. There are lots of problems, but if we reframe and rethink, I think we can come out maybe better than we were before. What I think is really important as a takeaway to this is that COVID-19 has forced our hand. Some of us were already thinking this way, but it has forced the hand of others to really identify the way we make decisions and to reframe and reshape them. So whereas before I could very easily go to Target and not really care about like who it affects, now COVID-19 life is saying, if I go to Target, who might I run into? Who might I infect? Who might infect me? Is this trip really worth it? And so I think that we can take this same decision-making concept and apply that to our life just in general. Just let's broaden that scope, right? And say, how might any decision I make affect my greater community? And if we can do that, then I think we're going to see a huge shift in the way we buy products, the way we make products, the things that we're doing, the amount that we're driving, the kinds of cars we're buying. I think this is a really great opportunity out of this crisis to use this new decision-making style that we've been forced into to have a really positive effect in the long run. So I think if you take nothing else from this, I hope you take the decision-making aspect. Sustainability, whether it's you, an individual, or a family, is really all about the decisions that you make. Very small decisions can have a very big impact. And if we can relay that message to our children and sort of in tandem with this COVID-19 decision-making process, this new lifestyle that we've had to adopt, I think we can actually come out sustainably stronger, right? We can actually, our children will be better prepared in the long run for that conservation, preservation, sustainable lifestyle. So I know that's a lot to throw at you guys, and that's a lot of monologue. But if anybody had any questions, go ahead and I guess type them in. And just real quick, I'm going to stop the screen share in just a second. But if anybody has any questions about anything that I talked about, feel free to shoot me an email right here or visit the website for the resource guide, and you can see all of those live cams. We've also got other activities for the kids there as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kate. That was a really great presentation. And I think a lot of the points even hit those of us that don't have kids, just as far as making sustainable choices. Does anybody have any questions? I'm not seeing any come up in the chat yet, or feel free to speak if you want to unmute yourself. That is totally welcome. Natalie says, thank you, Kate.
Welcome. I know it's a lot, you guys, and it's hard not to see all of your faces while I'm doing this. So now that I see your faces, I feel a little bit more comfortable. But again, I want to reiterate that there's no right or wrong to this, and we are not a perfectly sustainable family. We have plastic, we have waste, we cannot compost well to save our lives. Like, we've been working on this compost for like 2 years. We're trying, right? We're trying. And I think that is the message I'd like to relay, is that if you can try, that's like more than half the battle, because the kids are going to walk away with the effort that you put into trying to make a sustainable change.
One question I have, Kate, is if you have like non-negotiables in your house. I mean, it sounds like the plant-based eating, like I know that that's something that's really important for your family. But then do you have like other non-negotiables, and then things that you kind of as a family agree, like this is negotiable? Sometimes we'll use plastic in this arena or whatnot.
So I think our non-negotiables, my in-laws are on the line, so I think they will probably laugh at this, but non-negotiables for us are water bottles, like just plastic single-use water bottles. That is a huge no-no. And like, if you want to see my blood pressure go through the roof, you can bring one into my house. Yeah, I think that's one where I feel like with the kids, you know, I just want to show them there's really no excuse, right? We were traveling quite a bit. And so we would bring our hydro flasks to the airport. We would fill up after we went through security. It was just teaching them really a routine, right? It's like, here's the routine. You take your water bottle with you when you go. And then there's no excuse for being caught off guard, right? So I think that's sort of our non-negotiable. Plastic and toys, that's a really tough one, which, you know, I'm trying to solve, but yeah, that's a difficult one to get away from. So, you know, they love Legos. Like, what can we do? Legos are all plastic, right? So that's sort of a tricky one in our family. But I would say plant-based and plastic water bottles are the two non-negotiables. I'm probably missing something in there, but.
Okay, so we have another question in the chat from Aman, who lives in Austin, Texas, and is slowly trying to become more sustainable. She's asking, what are the 3 ways to start this process? They've already gotten rid of plastic bottles, straws, plastic bags, but any other tips on transition? And then Maggie piggybacked off of that and was also asking, what can people do who aren't necessarily near the ocean, but still make their kids feel connected to the issue?
Those are really good questions. To become a more sustainable family, I think I'm going to go back to like what I said in the presentation, making those small decisions. Obviously, I'll promote being plant-based. I think that's really important because you are reducing your CO2 output significantly, which is a huge cause of climate change, ocean temperature rise. So I think we can mitigate a lot of those factors by incorporating more plant-based meals into our lives. Even if you can't fully commit, if you can just swap out some of those meals for plant-based, you're going to do the world a huge service. And then I would try and figure out like where you can start biking instead of driving. I think that's been a really fun thing to do with our kids, biking to school, walking to school, and then biking when we can. That one can be tricky because especially here in Kailua, I feel like our drivers are really nuts and impatient, and you know, that's a little bit I don't want to say scary, but like you have to be a little bit extra cautious with that one. But I think those are good places to start. And then if you don't live near the ocean, I mean, we lived in Washington, D.C. before we moved here, so I understand that. And I think just trying to maintain any kind of connection to your surroundings. So getting out into nature when it's allowed during, you know, COVID-19, when it's allowed and permitted, parks, your backyard, going hiking, like whatever is at your disposal. I think letting the kids soak that in and just explore gives them a greater appreciation. And again, they're going to want to protect things that they really care about. So giving them opportunities to create that and cultivate that connection.
Any other questions for Kate?
Yes, I have one. And first of all, Kate, like you're such an amazing, inspiring person. I mean, I don't have a kid at all, but like, I think there's like really great takeaways that everybody can have from your suggestions. And I just want to know, what I've been really struggling with is just going shopping right now. I feel like not being able to use reusable containers when I go bulk shopping is kind of a thing. Do you have any suggestions? Like, how do you approach this kind of issue? Because I know you cook a lot yourself as well for a bigger family. And do you have any suggestions, like where can we buy groceries or bulk items without using a whole load of plastics, single-use plastics every day?
Yeah, so this is going to be kind of Hawaii specific because I don't really know what's happening in other parts of the States right now, but here in Hawaii, Down to Earth is allowing you to bag your own groceries with your own bags if you want to do that. And they also will let you buy brown bags if you need to do that as well. And then we purchased from, DURING, you might have to help me out with this one, the bulk vegan place in
Vegco.
Thank you.
I'll type it in.
They are a bulk provider, so they don't have any bags or anything like that. So that's how we've been doing it. And, you know, I think it's imperfect right now, but it's, you know, like everything else, it's just adjusting and learning and patience, figuring out the new normal.
I think also that Kokua Market, I don't know, I haven't been there in a few months, but they traditionally allow you to bring your own containers to fill up bulk items like rice. They're not allowing. I see in your face. Yeah, that makes sense during the pandemic.
I totally understand that. So if you want to go to the bulk section, most of the items have been already packed in little plastic bags. And
yeah, I mean,
it's tough.
It's tough. It's imperfect right now, but I'm hopeful that this is going to subside. And if not, then maybe this is an opportunity for the creative minded to come up with some solutions that are more sustainable. Like you, Natalie.
Any other questions?
People can also share if you have like specific challenges or things that you wanted to talk about. Like this could definitely be discussion based too. So feel free to share stories or challenges or anything like that.
I always feel like the webinars have this awkward moment where you're like, waiting. Any last words?
I think Maggie, I think everyone can see this, but Maggie said
there it is. Yeah.
Farmers markets have direct purchasing. So that's another good thing to note too.
Yeah, I know Kahumana has like a little setup at their farm.
I mean, I have to say, like, that is one of the positives about this. I think that we've recognized the importance of having local, fresh produce here on Oahu. I can't speak to the rest of the country, but I think that that's really wonderful for our local farmers that they're seeing such a boost in the amount of produce that people want from them. So I hope that those are the kinds of things that we can secure and like move forward with, despite, you know, whatever happens with the pandemic and however we come out of this. I hope we hold on to those kinds of things.
Absolutely. I'll keep my CSA subscription.
Yeah, and I just wanted to share that I spoke with the owner of Oahu Fresh, which offers those farm boxes that are customizable too, and you can like add bread and hummus and specialty products, so it's not just produce. And you can even get like fresh made meals or like meal packs with recipes and ingredients. But I forget the exact numbers, but he was saying I think they had like 100 orders a week, and now they're like at 10 times that, something like that. So I've heard 500%, 1000%, like the increase demand in the last month or two for these farm-based businesses has been huge. So yeah, I think we're all hoping that the behavior stick, especially for the delivery options, which are just as convenient as Amazon. So yeah, I think it's a great opportunity to shift the economy a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, if no one else has any questions, this is the last call. 3, 2, 1. Well, thank you so much, Kate, for coming and sharing with us how you make your children so woke. I think that's what we generally call them. They're woke children. They know.
In the title of our webinar, how to make your kids woke.
We'll change the title now, retroactive.